Appreciate you making the effort to be with us still.
Well, I showed up to the ad hoc group meeting the other night with a fever of 101.
She was attending the redistricting today over in Cheyenne, and I think she's somewhere between here and there right now. So she sends her regrets for being late.
And I just let a couple more into the meeting. It looks like Mayor Weaver and Dan Furphy just joined us, so we should be about ready to get started here.
That was our biggest.
Format a couple of times, and Senator, what we usually like to do is have the city manager sort of just give that overview and talk about some things that we're concerned about, touch on a couple of those things, and then I know that the county commissioners and Commissioner Gosar, Chairman Gosar, they want to touch on a couple of things, and then typically you guys sort of give us a preview of what you're looking for and things that you might think are of interest to us. Does that sound, like the general format, and does that seem okay to everybody? Because
sounds
we have
great
here on the agenda. Okay, it's more of a guideline in terms of what we have on the agenda. All right, Well, that being said, then I think I would like to turn it over to the city manager for the, or the assistant city manager in this case, for the little overview part of this meeting from the city's end of it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councilor. Thank you, Senators and Representatives, for being here tonight. Nancy, are you going to share screen for us on the stuff that Janine had provided?
I sure can. Would you like the memo first, Assistant City Manager?
Yes. I'm not sure if everybody got a chance to see the stuff in the agenda or the online center for us or not. You know, this one was on the State of the City's Fiscal Outlook. And I do apologize. This was provided by Janine. She's at a meeting tonight in Casper, working with some of the other large municipalities on plans to work together this year. So we're pretty excited about that. But, you know, I don't know how much of this you'd like me to read. I think the biggest thing that we'd like to talk about is the decrease in the direct distribution. And if you go down to the middle of the screen there, you can see that from 2014 to 2022, we've had a 30-cent decrease a decrease in millions of dollars since 2014. The hardship has gone down from 1.8 million to about 600,000, which has been significant impact for the city of Laramie. And then all municipal funding statewide, that we've gone from 14.9 to 12%, regardless of our standing as the third largest community in the state of Wyoming. So, you know, over the past years, we've seen a decrease in direct distribution from the state of Wyoming, and pleasantly so, though, over the past year or so, due to wind energy, we have seen powerful sales tax that has helped us bridge that gap, but we don't know that that's going to stay in place for very much longer. With that being said, I'd be happy to answer any questions on this memo to the best of my ability, or to allow the council and anybody to have any discussions that way as we go through it.
Does anybody have any anything they want to add into that, or anything that they don't have a good sense of?
Well, I do have a question, and I was trying to bring this memo up. I struggling to find the email, although I know I got it. But while I'm working on that, the offset for sales tax, I know we have had increased sales and use tax as the city. I assume we've had, it's probably not much CARES, but some ARP Act, if I'm not mistaken. What has the overall budget looked like with consideration of the loss of hardship revenue?
It hasn't gone unnoticed, as you probably suspect. It's just one more thing that I think our budget people always try to keep us apprised of, and it just adds to the Senator, adds to the overall pressure of trying to keep up the same level of services with despite what the current census numbers have told us, with half a point to a point's worth of growth in the city of Laramie every year over the last 10 years. And an increase on the need to keep the services up to the level that people are accustomed to and that they believe that they pay for, while we continue to have a decrease in overall revenue coming in, which, you know, it's that chart that we like to show you every year, legislators, where it just goes like this, right? The demand for services goes up and the revenue goes down, and it creates this duck mouth that just it's not sustainable over time. So Chris, it contributes to that. That is the overall effect of losing that. What should we call it? That stabilization allocation. Yeah, the hardship funds. Yeah.
And Senator Rothfuss, to you, you know, over my 6 years in here in Laramie, what I've seen is basically stagnation in the ability to staff correctly. I mean, we just, as Mayor Weaver noted, we grow at that 0.5 to 1 or 1.5% annually. We know that to be significantly or true as we go through this, even though our census numbers didn't show that. But you know, we're seeing that slide, and the inability to levy our own local taxes doesn't allow us to make up that difference in that hardship or the direct distribution as it decreases. It makes it much more difficult to provide the high quality of services that our residents have come to expect at the same level as we begin to lose footing in the number of staff members serving those residents.
So on the point of taxing ourselves and having flexibility, we did pass finally some decent legislation that gave us a little more flexibility on what it takes to achieve consensus on the 6th and 7th cent. We obviously already passed the 6th cent under the old system. Is there any discussion of the 7th cent or the economic development additional sales tax and utilization of any of that on the council?
Senator Rothfuss, I think there's certainly an eye towards that, and I think we'd want to take a pretty we'd want to tread carefully. And I'll give you an example. The legislature also in the last couple of years created the capacity for the local governments to take a look at the drainage utility, and that was honestly a very big deal, and it's something that we've been looking at really closely, and that we've talked a lot about how to implement. But given the timing of that legislation and then everything else that's gone on, you know, we weren't ready to get rip-roaring with that in 2020 for obvious reasons, and in 2021 for obvious reasons. So these tools that we have that have been passed on to us from the legislature over the last couple of years are certainly all on our radar. There's certainly all things that we're trying to think about the best ways to implement them. And you're right, it is a pretty big deal and a pretty big shift to see the consensus, should we call it the consensus model, change around that. There's a little bit of hesitancy to jump all over every possible tax and every possible fee without maybe having a coordinated plan with the county commission, the county government, and some other things. So I don't know that we can tell you, yeah, we have ABC plans for those dollars right away, and we're going to go and ask for them. I do know that we'd like to implement those drainage funds. And one of the big reasons for that is we'd like to really get some of those long-term infrastructure challenges in West Laramie addressed through the use of those funds. And there are also some in, shall we call it, Northwest Laramie here in Central Laramie, where we have some long-standing drainage issues. So that stuff is alive and well. Assistant City Manager, you know, more directly to Senator Rothfuss's question here about those economic development approaches and that additional tax revenue. I don't know that we've had real detailed conversations. I think we've had sort of top level conversations about that's a good tool. When can we realistically look at maybe being able to go and ask for that? Would you add anything to that?
Honorable Mayor, I wouldn't. I would say that, you know, over the past year and a half or 2 years, as with all of us, we've had so much struggle just keeping the wheels on and staying with it that adding one more stick to the camel's back is questionable at that time. That we will certainly get to that, and we certainly aren't out of our neck of the woods in some of the things that I'm sure you've all seen in the national news that we're continuing to chase after, and that does take time, which is probably more priority time right now than the other pieces. So.
And I should add too that I think there really is recognition from the city council and our membership here that there has been some hard work, and we've watched some of it unfold over there at the Capitol at trying to create a little bit more flexibility than existed before, and it's certainly moving boulders up hills over there, and it's acknowledged, and we're interested to see how that can improve our picture, our local financial picture here. Unfortunately, as the assistant city manager just said, we're kind of still we're operating in a really strange, uncertain space right now to a large degree still. but there is some thought that the use of those new funding streams is going to make a difference in some of these areas.
Yeah.
I won't sit here and tell you that it's going to create an environment that takes care of all of these concerns. The staffing concerns and the need to maintain services commensurate with growth. I don't think it's going to take care of all those concerns. It's definitely a better situation than we were in 3 or 4 years ago, to be sure.
Well, and we'll continue to fight for that flexibility. I do think that both of the pieces of legislation we've discussed are valuable, but I certainly don't have any heartburn about the fact that we haven't pulled the trigger on any of it yet, because it has been a challenging time since that legislation was passed to be contemplating utilizing them, but more flexibility is going to be better. And obviously, we've had discussions in the past, and I think we'll still continue to pursue alternative distribution models, whether that's the hardship or even better would be getting back to the what Janine refers to as the gold standard, which is trying to get to the point where we have per capita distribution of sales and use tax statewide, as opposed to the ridiculous approach that we use right now. But you can imagine how politically challenging it is for us to get through that conversation. So we'll keep working on it, but I don't think that's probably going to move much in the near future. We'll look for opportunities.
Yeah, if I could
Certainly.
just jump in
Yeah.
here.
Hi, Jane.
Sorry, we really need to echo that comment, Chris, because simple division, that we all learn in 3rd grade or 4th grade, works out really well for Laramie. So we are fully supportive of dividing those funds equally on a per capita basis.
Yeah.
Senator
and
Ross,
go ahead.
This is the vice mayor's favorite topic, or maybe we should call it the sharpest burr in the vice mayor's saddle. But I mean, I completely agree. It is hard to explain to folks that live in our community that try to follow this stuff a little bit, why we don't follow that model, and the complexities there, and it would be great to get back to that. I'm sorry. Thank you for letting me, add on to that. You were going to say something, Chris. Go right ahead. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. I was just going to note that it makes a big difference, and we spend a lot of time looking at the per capita distribution numbers and per capita expenditure numbers statewide. It's all about just the politics surrounding it. Who are the winners? Who are the losers? And when we reach a point where the numbers are favorable, maybe we'll be able to get some change there.
Sure.
I will tack on briefly, Mayor, that I don't know that hardship is going to come up again, but we never know when it is or isn't going to come up, right? That's something that certainly, while I haven't heard it discussed as a topic for the budget session, the way that we've been doing the direct distribution of the hardship, it always seems to be in the budget. It always seems to be subject to the whims and desires of those that are crafting the budget. So we'll watch that closely. We'll look for opportunities. You recall last year and the year before, we tried to tweak the formula. I know the amendment that further reduced it 2 years ago, I want to say, should be reversed, but I don't know that it will be reversed. The bringer of that amendment is no longer in the legislature. Maybe we can get the old form, which would at least kick us up. I think it's $100K that we lost in that minor tweak, which was not a minor tweak for us. But again, trying to improve it more significantly and to the point where we get the extra million-ish relative to where we're at right now. We can look for that opportunity, but it again requires having a consensus of folks that would benefit from it. And we'll have to look at the numbers, and maybe I don't know if Janine has had that spreadsheet run. If that spreadsheet is kind of done forward looking based on up-to-date actuals, I would appreciate getting that. And I don't know if that exists yet, but I would appreciate seeing that data.
That's something that we can definitely get for you, and I think it is. I think it is a forward, kind of a feed forward document. So I think so. And also, Senator Rothfuss, we should take a minute just to say thank you for your efforts over those last couple of years, because some of those amendments could have come out even worse for us. And thanks to some of your work over there, they didn't. So we do appreciate that. I know the citizens appreciate that. Yes, it was a hit. You mentioned the tweak, and then it's a cumulative effect over the biennium. That's the other piece of that, right? It's not just, oh, Laramie's going to lose $100,000 out of this amendment. It's, no, we're going to lose $100,000 out of every supplemental funding payment over the biennium, and that's what really does the damage. I know the county's got the county commissioners have got some interesting stuff. I want to make sure that we we've done our best job with the overview. I think Representative Sherwood, Representative Provenza, Senator Rothfuss, Senator Furphy, I think you folks have a pretty solid understanding of our fiscal picture here. We try to make sure that information is available to you. We tell you about it. When you ask us, we let you know. And that's not to say that, let's fast forward through this part of the meeting, but let's address any unknowns or specific questions you might have, because I feel like we have a pretty good two-way communication. I think you understand a lot about what our fiscal picture is. So if there's anything that you need some more information, like that document that you requested, things like that, this is a good opportunity to let us know.
I'll ask for one more thing that I don't know if it's been produced yet, but it's something that I've been contemplating, and it gets this will be a question for the county as well, but in a different manner. The kind of payment in lieu of taxes type discussion, we have that in a lot of circumstances with state and federal lands, but in Laramie and Albany County, both, whether you contemplate the sales tax side of it, where the university purchases are sales tax exempt, what's the total there? What is the offset that the university is not paying that would be paid if it were a private entity? I've never seen an estimation of that for the university on the sales tax side. Similarly, on the property tax side, I'd be curious to know what that would amount to for the county more than for the city in that instance. We don't have those numbers. They calculate it for state and federal land just on the assessed value, but obviously that's more challenging when we start contemplating the assessment side of the university. If you were to assess the value of the university, what would that be equal to? This is something that we could build a little bit of a coalition around, because the folks over in Laramie County are sensitive to the same thing when they contemplate the property tax loss associated with all of the state facilities that are over there. So it's just something to maybe contemplate and explore. If we have the ability to make some estimates, I think that would be useful for us to fuel the discussion on the hardship.
I think that was done once upon a time, but I think it's been several years, enough years back now that it's probably not relevant. And I'm talking, before, with the exception of possibly Councilmember Schuster, before any of us, or maybe Councilmember Gabriel, before any of us were in office. It's been a while back. I know it was done, but I think it's been at least 10 or 15 or more years. I wonder how we'd go about estimating those numbers so we could provide them and do so in a way that we felt like we could represent as legitimate. I don't know. Would we have our county assessor take a look at that? What would be the approach there?
It's a good question. The first approximation I could come up with would be private universities, assuming that they pay property tax to try and get comps, so to speak. Other than that, I don't know. So if you look at the assessed valuation of a private university that was of similar size and stature, and then looked at it relative to local assessed valuations of similar building types, and then did a comp over with our assessments, that might be a pathway. On the sales tax side, honestly, there's got to be estimates on the budget side for the university, which is public information about expenditures that would be sales tax exempt. The other thing that I don't know is when you look at the building projects of the university, the associated exempted sales tax for that, I honestly don't know how that works. So that would be something else to explore.
Well, and I think it's a really salient point. I mean, the footprint of the university continues to get larger, and I think really the thing is, even a relatively small fraction of assessed property value on the university's holdings would be a really significant revenue increase for the county and the city. I know Councilmember Schuster had something he wanted to say here.
When LCCC built their building over here, they do a, and I'm not going to use the word payment, but what they do is they allow city employees to take so many credit hours in lieu of taxes because they got a very good deal on their property. So we did a, in lieu of taxes, get so many credit hours for city employees, and that's worked out really nice. And just like you said, that you can, since they have, all their records are open to everything, just like our cities are, that you could look at their expenditures on what they actually physically buy, as in vehicles, food services, everything like that. You could look at that and you could assess how much it would have been in sales tax. Approximating their net worth, oh my goodness. I don't even, that would be scary because I'm sure with the size of their buildings and their technology and everything they have there, I'm guessing it would probably be, it would double the county's income at least with the value of everything. It just, I would be afraid to guess that the university's worth more than the city of Laramie in actual money value. It'd be a bunch.
Well, I don't think we want to go. I don't think we want to go too far into what I would call rainbow and lollipop land with the idea that PILT dollars are coming. But it would be good to have an idea. And Councilmember O'Doherty, I see you. It would be a good idea to have some ballpark figure on that, or it really as accurate as we could get, so it could be mixed into the discussion. I think is what I'm hearing from the
Mayor, that's exactly right. When justifying the hardship payment, having those types of this is where we're losing out, and that's why we need the hardship is an important point for discussion. That having an understanding of that is incredibly helpful. Just the simple fact that, hey, we don't have as much money as everybody else, give us more, never seems to be compelling. So I like a little more than that. I'm having discussions about it.
And water sales,
I think that's very worthwhile doing, and I think it would be interesting for this community to know. I think it would be interesting for the city council and the county commissioners and our legislators to have as accurate a figure as we could get as to what that value would be. Councilmember O'Doherty, thanks for waiting.
I wanted to say at the very least we could do it the amount that Wyotech is paying in taxes per acre, and just assume it would be an underestimate because the Wyotech buildings aren't as big, but also just the residential. There's so much residential, and we lost, our county assessor lost that case, all the money that's lost, and yet we still have to provide the fire and the police if something happens. Thank you.
Honorable Mayor, if I could add to that we've got a fantastic finance division here with City of Laramie. That's what those folks are built to do, is to develop models that can predict all of that stuff. And we'll ask them to work on that and certainly work towards providing that for everybody.
And you better watch out. We're growing at 20% a year. So they joke about it. We intend to pass the university in the next 15 years.
He's funny.
Right. Yeah.
Mayor Weaver? Yeah, we're going to see if we can get Assessor Matthews to take a look at that and give us some ideas on how she might go about doing that or ballpark it. I think it's a really interesting idea and something that I don't want to sign her on for it, but we're certainly going to ask the new assessor if she could give us an idea on what that might be appraised at, right? And that it's a simple math problem after that, I'm told.
Chairman Gosar, county commissioners, I think this is one of those things where in our meeting we should just to the extent that we can say that we'd like to have the city's finance team work with the assessor's office over there to get some good numbers, both for our own use and to help our legislators make some of the case that they need to make over there. And I don't think we have a problem making kind of an informal agreement to do that and spend a little time bringing that forward. I think that's safe to say. I hope the county commissioners agree.
Seems like we're in agreement, Mayor Weaver. We'll do what we can to be helpful.
Likewise. I think that's sort of the plan here. I know that we have a few other topics that want to come up, but all this discussion about the educational institutions did remind me of one other topic that I would like to bring up. Again, I don't know if it's one of these things that we're going to have all kinds of great solutions for instantly. I did attend a meeting with the LCCC campus and representatives from the Laramie County Community College Board and the president and some local stakeholders here, where a great deal of concern was expressed about the future of that branch campus here in Albany County and what our thoughts would be about how we could help stabilize their situation and make it a more sustainable future plan. I know Councilmember Somerville is here, and she, memory may serve her better than mine about some of the key topics. But I know that the situation is a little bit fragile with the branch campus here, and they'd like to have a meeting. I think we have a meeting with them coming up really soon with the president from LCCC and a few other things. And I think that's just something to communicate to all of you, is that's an ongoing discussion and a concern. I think in general, the takeaway from that meeting I went to was that for the most part, people would like to see the branch campus stay here. And they feel like it has been an asset to our community. It won't surprise any of you legislators to hear that we don't really have a lot of funding on the county and city level to try to help them out and to keep their operation moving along. We'd like to be partners with them if we can. Commissioner Ibarra, is there anything I'm missing? I know you were at that meeting with us. I think we kind of expressed that to them, that, yeah, we like having you here. No, I don't really think we can commit to any funds. I don't know if you had any thoughts about that meeting either. I just think it's worth talking a little bit about now, because I know that these legislators will be talking about community college funding as well.
Yes, Mayor Weaver, your summary is pretty right on accurate. I think towards the end of the meeting, that specific question was made to the city as well as the county. How much money can you contribute? And we pretty much had to be honest and say nothing. But that we valued their presence, as do so many of the citizens and all. Unfortunately, I think what came out of some of the discussion and the presentation was that we're losing a little bit of the connection with UW. They're not so willing to work with LCCC, the Albany branch, as far as accepting some of the coursework, or even accepting some of the students without prior requirements and all. And so that hasn't been a good thing. And then there continues to be struggles with the school district and making sure that they are part of this, that works for them as well as the campus branch. So it's a complex thing, and it'd be sad to see this lost, because I think there's so many opportunities for the young people out there to have another opportunity for post-secondary education that isn't involving the university, because that can be very intimidating, costly, and whatever, as well as the community benefits from some of the classes that are offered. And I would hate to see that go, especially because people don't want to have to drive over to Cheyenne to get this education. So it'd be nice to have that stay here.
Yeah, I think right. I think you brought up a couple of things that I didn't really think about, which is that those were also elements of that discussion. I'm sorry to take us down another path, but I think it is important for you guys to hear about that because I know there will be discussion about community college funding. I think it's a little bit of an underutilized education resource here that sometimes is overshadowed somewhat by by our other institutions. And I think it does provide a utility for our community and to the University of Wyoming, because I do know that there are many occasions for students to need to pick up a class here or there, and it can fill that niche, and it can also be a feeder for students that may want to start a little bit slower in a little bit different higher education environment before they go to UW. Something I want to get on your radar. Yeah.
Mayor Weaver.
Yeah.
Dan Furphy here.
Yes.
One of the things people in Laramie don't realize is that the people in Cheyenne tax themselves for our campus. So we are not taxing ourselves for that. So I just make everyone aware of that. So that's something we may have to deal with in the future.
And
so,
Mayor, this is Chris. I want to follow on to Senator Furphy's comments. One of the struggles is that we can't tax ourselves. The statutes that surround community college districts are horrible. Through the Education Committee, I've looked at them and we've tried to work through them. When we were struggling with the challenges from a few years ago with WyoTech, we explored some methodology there, trying to work through the community college district, and learned that there isn't an easy or elegant way for us to either tax ourselves, provide any mills, to incorporate Albany County into the Laramie County Community College District or anything else without dissolving the district first. There is a possibility of creating a BOCES, which is a Board of Cooperative Education Services, but even that doesn't work particularly well. So there are a lot of statutory challenges that lead to us not having solutions here, and it's something that the Education Committee hasn't addressed, but probably should. And believe me, I'm an incredible supporter and advocate for LCCC Albany County. It's a true asset to our community, and I think we should be paying taxes for it. We just don't have a vehicle for it right now.
We've got a couple of people lined up. Well, I've got people ahead. I've got people ahead of you, Vice Mayor. But I will go to you. I've got Councilmember Schuster, then Councilmember Somerville, and then the Vice Mayor. So let's go to Councilmember Schuster.
Thank you very much. I share the same sentiment. I have relation that works over there. They talk about the Laramie campus. There's some tenured professors and everything. And yes, this is extremely fragile over here. And I'm sorry that our senator kind of shot me down, because I was hoping now that the high school, the mill levy's got to be about done on that. I know it's either close to being done or done, that I was wishing we could just reenact that and see what we could do more for LCCC. I contacted the city manager over a year ago and said at one time they wanted to expand, and I said, we're not using that property out there. We keep talking about how much property we have out there and how much it's worth, but nobody's buying it. We ought to see how much we could turn over to them and see if we could make a better, more prosperous campus. I mean, I am completely for this, to have Laramie as the education capital of Wyoming. I mean, I'd love to see that, because so many more people are working towards Associates of Applied Science, the 2-year degree, rather than a Bachelor of Education. So I just think we've got to get on that bandwagon, or it's gonna pass us by, because that campus is in fragile shape here, and I want it to stay. Thank you.
Councilmember Somerville. Thank you, Councilmember Schuster.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to add it. I don't know how far down in the weeds we want to get here tonight, but I don't want the legislators to leave with the impression that the city, just speaking for the city itself, has not contributed to LCCC, because we certainly have. The donation of the land, we've continued to work with them on some MOUs. So while I understand that the taxation piece is difficult, and that's a difficult situation with the LCCC board that's elected over in Cheyenne, we certainly have used some of the tools that we have available here to try to support them in other ways. I also think I think this will be a difficult conversation to have here with them shortly in terms of that future. And I think it's important that all of the stakeholders are at the table, which includes our legislators, but also our business community, our community members. LCCC really needs some guidance from us on what the community wants from their community college before they can move forward with potential options. And I think down the road, to Senator Rothfuss and Senator Furphy's point, taxation is a conversation that we do need to have as a community. And I do remember going through those statutes with you, Senator Rothfuss, and it is very messy, and we certainly recognize that fact.
Thank you, Councilmember Simber. Vice Mayor Pierce, thank you very much for your patience on that. I just had those council members that had a hand up, and I didn't want to skip anybody. Thank you for waiting.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you. I think we need to remind ourselves that Teton County doesn't pay for the services of CWC in Fremont County, and I think this is a concern statewide, not just in this little corner of the state. So I want to make it clear that this may be more of a legislative issue as opposed to Southeast Wyoming issue. The second thing I'd like to bring up is in today's paper, there was the discussion with Governor Gordon, allocating $27 million of federal relief dollars regarding the partnership between the University of Wyoming and the community colleges. And I think just in light of that funding and that proposal and those initiatives related to the education of our state, I think we have to be ever so supportive of the community college campuses and wherever they happen to be in whatever, if it's a satellite campus in any of the counties of the state.
As usual, comments worth waiting for from Vice Mayor Pierce. I'll say this, the reason I wanted to bring this up, guys, was one thing I don't know that I've emphasized to you yet is how they were communicating to us the very real possibility of a campus closure here, of a branch campus closure. I mean, it's very much on the table for their board of trustees over there. I think we've kind of exhausted the topic, but I did want you all to be well aware of that and to really understand and contemplate that it could come to pass that they just decide they're going to pull the campus. I hope not. I think that may be less likely than some other alternatives, but they did want to make it very clear that their governance is taking a hard look at possibly closing our Albany County branch campus for financial realities that they're wrestling with over there. I think the BOCES option that you mentioned, Senator Rothfuss, is certainly not a silver bullet. I do think that needs to be entertained in detail by our school district over here and other partners. Anyway, important topic. I hope you all understand why we wanted to spend some time on it. I didn't mean for it to take us quite that far, but it's a big one, and it ties into statewide legislative issues with community colleges, as the Vice Mayor said. So. Assistant City Manager, did we have anything that was on our sort of list of city items that we really wanted to let the legislators know about before I turn it over to Chairman Gosar?
Honorable Mayor, I think the two most important things before we turn it over, potential legislation at the 67th legislation this spring, and that's our concerns with firefighter pension plan. Absolutely. And then the funds that are coming from the federal government on the infrastructure and the Build Back Better, and our statements that we'd like to make to that. Would you like me to make those?
Yeah.
At this time?
Yes, I would.
So, and I'm not sure how many of you are aware, but firefighter pension A has been struggling for many, many years now, but the Joint Appropriations Committee recently got together and they're bringing forward legislation that will hopefully correct it, but it also presses the city of Laramie to where it looks like we'll have a $143,000 annual payment through 2041, 2042 potentially, if it does go through as it's intended. We're just looking We had a long presentation at the work session the other night that some of our council members can speak to, but we certainly need the state to step forward and help us out on Fire Pension A. We haven't had any firefighters in Pension A since 2010. All of our current firefighters are in Pension B, and the thought that there's potential legislation that might combine A with B puts every firefighter in the state of Wyoming at fear of what it might do to their pension, as their pension is set up to handle just Fire Pension B, but absorb A that could make them concerned about the longevity of their pension as they work forward. And I think it's just valid for us to do that. The other two, the federal funding that may be coming through, I think our big statement on that is that we would appreciate it if legislature would either pass those funds through directly to the cities for us to use as we see needed, or use existing channels to disperse those funds through either the business council or some other existing agency, instead of trying to create a new agency or new model to disperse those funds. With that being said, I'll be happy to answer any questions. I feel like we're taking a lot of the time from the entire legislative meet and greet for the city right now, and don't want to steal too much more of the county's time.
Todd, I just want to clarify, we've had nobody that's used the plan, received any benefits from plan, this is firefighter A, since 2010, so nobody that is a former Laramie or I don't think we have county
Senator Rothfuss, that's we haven't had a active firefighter in Pension A since 2010 on payroll. We do have firefighters that are in the pension now.
Right. How many do we, and I don't need if you could get us that data, just a one pager on outstanding liability effectively, how many firefighters we've had, a little summary so that we have that internal, that would be useful, I think, to the legislators. So I don't need you to do anything more than send us that.
Okay, then Senator Rothfuss, I do believe that's in the packet that was sent to you today, but we're responsible for 14%. And if I remember correctly, did we have 6 firefighters in the pension from the presentation last week? Do any of the counselors remember?
I thought it was 42 or something.
Oh, the city of Laramie has 42 of them?
City clerk looks like she's got a clue.
Mayor, I will look that information up for you and send that to the group. Does that sound?
That'd be great. And Senator Rothfuss, it looks like you had a follow-up there.
No, Mayor, I just found it in the packet, and I'm sorry that I missed that earlier. I see it, and I think that has all the details we need. So I don't think we need any follow-up unless there's questions after we read it. My apologies.
Okay, no worries. There's a couple of different things in that packet. We do try to get some good info for you guys. Even if you can't look at all of it now, we know that you all have a lot of reading material. That might be something to just put in the file for stuff when City of Laramie issues come up, and then we may have already given you some of the things that you might want to see. I'd like to share with you that we had the what was the guy's name from Wyoming Retirement System come, council staff, I can't remember, but at a recent work session, and sort of give us a breakdown of this pending legislation, and without trying to really without trying to give us the hard sell, basically say that they were generally in support of it, but the Wyoming Retirement Services Board doesn't really take a position on legislation, but they did think this was a possible solution. I can tell you that that the City of Laramie, we have some concerns about the legislation as it's structured, and I think it's worth sharing that with you. We could also share with you that the Wyoming Association of Municipalities has decided not to take a position on this, largely because it only affects a handful of the membership. Yes, it happens to be some of the larger communities, but it's really only those communities that it's affecting, so they're kind of staying out of it. We're not that crazy about it for reasons that are probably easy to understand. The way we're looking at it is it's like, here's a loan from the state to help stabilize a pension plan that you have to take, and you're going to be able to pay it back at this amount over time. And thank you very much. We have a couple of misgivings about that. Without going too into it, maybe we could catch you up on some of that in a later conversation. I know we have other topics here, but Assistant City Manager Fieser, that's a big one. I hope I've represented our position generally pretty well there, council members. That was sort of my takeaway when the last time we talked about this is we didn't really love it. And I think if it was one of these things where we need to get ready to live with it, legislators, if it's just one of those things that it's going to be very difficult for us to come up with a different solution. Maybe a different structure to the loan and payments and timelines could be something that might be a little easier for our budget to live with. Something to think about. Let's see. Anything else on the fire pension aid? Doesn't look like any of the council members have much more to add to that. Assistant City Manager Fields, there's one more topic, which is sort of the more general expenditures topic, right? Or,
correct.
Yeah.
That's the use of the infrastructure bill, the federal infrastructure bill, and the Build Back Better America bill that's coming through, and how those funds come through. And if we could encourage anything, just to either speedy pass through to the cities to use them in some kind of a distribution format, or to use current existing structures, whether it's the business council or other entities, to help do that state revolving loan fund, to help try to make sure that those funds are quickly available to municipalities. We could certainly, in Laramie, use a lot of that infrastructure money towards stormwater, wherever it will land. I don't believe it was available for roads, but to use it to benefit the infrastructure that we need to make sure that our city is poised for the future.
And I recall from some information shared with the council from the city manager. There are a lot of programs, as you folks probably know, already in place that are set up to help pass federal dollars through the states to the local communities, that those funds could easily be channeled through without having to take a lot of complicated extra steps and extra moves for how to administer those dollars. So I think the hope is from the city here that those same channels will remain in place and will be the channels to access those infrastructure funds. And I think you'll probably hear that from other cities across the state. We don't have any reason to believe that they're not, but who knows? Who knows what the approach will be when those dollars begin to be distributed. And I think we just wanted to make sure that you heard from us that what's in place now works great. It's not broken. It doesn't need to be fixed. Representative Sherwood?
Hi. Hi there. I just wanted to make sure that you guys saw on the governor's Drive Thrive website that goal number 10 that does allocate American Rescue Plan funds to cities, counties, towns, and tribes. It's 100,000 right now. 100 million. But he is soliciting, or the strike team is soliciting feedback. So if you haven't already, I would highly encourage you, or anyone who's listening who wants to see American Rescue Plan Fund dollars support cities directly, I feel like this is an infomercial. Go to drivethrive.wyo.gov, and then you'll see under goals and proposals goal number 10 is to support funding for cities. So please give feedback that you just shared with us through this website as well.
Certainly. Thank you for that. A lot of these things feel like infomercials, right? Or telethons even sometimes. But I appreciate that information, and I think too. I don't want to have our wires crossed. There's the rescue plan dollars, and the need for those, I think, to be allocated and distributed in a way that makes sense for cities, and then also our hopes for the way that the infrastructure dollars out of the last, shall we call it, package of legislation, that our hope is that the legislature does not decide that there needs to be a new mechanism for accessing those dollars for your streets and your repairs and those things. Again, we have no reason to believe that that is the case, but we're also concerned that there may be some idea. Council members, did I screw any of that up? Is that pretty much how we feel about that? I think we've talked about it. Okay. I think a lot of these discussions are interrelated, and I don't think that the county and the city view ourselves as really separate on a great deal of this. But I know we did kind of want to bifurcate the meeting between a couple of different sets of concerns where we wanted different people to take the lead on the discussion. Assistant City Manager, I think that kind of wraps up the city's list, and I think I'm ready to turn it over for the lead in on discussion over to Chairman Gosar, and I appreciate the way that we've been able to set this meeting up. Chairman Gosar?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Weaver. Thank you, Senators Rothfuss and Furphy, Representative Provenza, and Sherwood. We're thinking about doing this a little bit different from our end. We would like to hear from you guys about things that may impact counties, either positively or negatively, and then maybe we would have a few things to work off of that. We do have a small list of concerns here. Some of them are minor, some of them are multi-year discussions. But is that something that you guys would like to share with us as far as your concerns or your interests as you see them playing out in Albany County? And Senator Rothfuss, I'll just start with you because I have you in the center of the screen.
Yeah. Thank you, Commissioner Gosar. Honestly, most of the focus has been on looking at the budget, and when it comes to contemplating distribution, that's where my concern is, and I don't know where it's going at this point. I wish I had a more specific answer, but as we look at the budget and we see Hawks desiring to cut it, we see some maintenance of effort requirements there, we see probably swaps on the horizon by the governor looking to utilize some of the ARP funding for internal expenditures. I think there's a lot of balls in the air, and I don't know where the direct distribution discussion is going to end up. I haven't seen either positive or negative legislation that relates directly to the counties or the cities so far. I just took a look at, and all of you have been probably following it more than I have on corporations, but they're meeting right now, some of the corporations bills. So I'm not seeing anything on the horizon that raises a huge red flag for either the municipalities or the counties, but that doesn't mean it's not out there. I just haven't seen it yet. And I defer to Representative Provenza, Sherwood, and Senator Furphy to see if they've seen anything that is either good or bad on the horizon.
Thanks, Senator Rothfuss. Anybody else want to jump in? Representative Provenza?
I mean, I haven't seen anything to my knowledge. The only thing that I would echo that Senator Rothfuss mentioned is the governor's budget and the swapping of funds with $450 million in a savings account. I would like to see us put money back where we have taken it away rather than putting it in savings. So that's at least where I'm at. But I haven't heard anything about what we're going to be doing to counties or finances for municipalities.
Representative Sherwood, I have your hand up, and then Senator Furphy will go to you, please.
Thank you. So I know that Jeremiah Ryman, who's the executive director for the Wyoming County Commissioners Association, has been following this and offering testimony. But two things that concern me. One is draft legislation that would change the formula for industrial siting and sort of that impact funding formula, and less money going to cities and counties when we have, say, a wind development project. And I think that there's on minerals, this idea that that money should go to the state. I disagree with that. So I hope the commissioners have talked to Jeremiah about this and kind of what he's seeing and tracking. And I know that he is there to speak on your behalf, the concerns. So we were able to kind of kill that bill last year, but it's coming back again from members of minerals. The other thing that I think is concerning that the city really and county should be looking at is there is pressure to change the business ready community program recapture amount that the Wyoming Business Council administers. So right now in their rules, there's just a general, 25% of net revenue from projects that have a business committed should go back to the Business Council. So it's not it's called a grant, but it really is not when you have money going back to the state level. And the philosophy is that, we need a way to refuel that pot of money that the Business Council is using. I don't think that should be done on the backs of cities and counties. That money should be reinvested in the next economic development project. So that there are some members of minerals who are pushing to move that 25% to 75%, which I think really hinders our ability to continue to invest in the growth of businesses, whether that's partnering with the chamber, or it's a city-led project. So if you haven't been watching that is one I'm also concerned about.
Thank you, Representative Sherwood. Senator Murphy, do you have anything that would be helpful to us?
Sure. Let me, I've spent the last 2 days in Transportation Committee. Let me make it clear, at the state level, we're $600 million short of funding our roadways and highways. That's a big issue. And another big issue is, if I understand it right, some of these infrastructure dollars coming from the feds are going to ask for a match. So that's something that will put additional pressure on the cities and counties if you somehow have to come up with some match dollars to really get the big dollars coming into the community. I hope that's wrong. I hope we're getting bad information on that, but could be an issue. Our state is stressed on infrastructure issues, and so we've got to come up with some creative ideas on how we're going to fund this. Some of the creative ideas is diverting some of our savings that we've been putting in for long term to support our state long term, diverting those savings and spending them on roadways, etc. I hate to see that happen, but unless we want to tax ourselves, which we seem to not want to do as a state, we're going to have to deal with some creative ideas that may not be the best long-term for our state. So I'll stop there and answer any questions anyone may have.
Thank you all. I really do appreciate that insight. Commissioners, any questions on what we heard from any of the representatives or senators?
Not any questions on that. I do have another question. I had a meeting today representing the commissioners in the town and gown, and a conversation focused on mental health. And I wanted to know what we can expect in the future, near future, addressing this, recognizing that it's a much bigger problem than it might have been acknowledged before, and that it needs serious funding. What can we expect as far as mental health?
Representative Provenza, I think you should take that one.
Yeah, I'll take that one. So there's a few things that are coming down the pipe right now. With the Mental Health and Substance Abuse Select Committee that I serve on, we have been tasked with trying to come up with a process for the House Bill 38 that came in that put tiers in terms of how we're paying for mental health services. I think that is now in Labor and Health. So we as a task force came up with a proposed plan. It went to them. Sorry, my cat is taking over. But then they're moving with it. So we'll see what they do with it. I haven't been updated since their last meeting. But that will be probably not very beneficial. I think a lot of people fall through the cracks because of that tiered pay system. So we put tier 1 being criminal justice involved folks. And that just means we're putting more money towards that rather than on the front end trying to keep people from ending up maybe there. And in relation to that, the Judiciary Committee is now considering Title 25 involuntary holds, so Chapter 10. And that was a total rework of the Chapter 10 section that county prosecutors came up with, certainly not all of them, but they came up with draft legislation. We considered it at the last meeting, which was supposed to be our last meeting, but we are now going into a 4th meeting to work this Title 25 draft bill. I don't even know, we've amended it. There are over 50 staff notes on it, and I think I can't remember the number off the top of my head. I'm sorry, I can send it to you, but version 0.5, but that would impact counties in terms of how we're handling Title 25 issues, involuntary holds, and trying to figure out what services we're putting people into the community. How are we defining mental illness? And that definition is going to, would possibly dramatically change who we're serving. But it's hard to say what that's doing right now because we stopped in the middle of amending it. But that's all I think that I have on my radar in terms of what's coming down. Of course, I'll be looking at ways that we're funding mental health because we severely are underfunding mental health. Another thing that came on my radar the other day from someone who works with patient advocates said that there's a grant under 9813 of ARPA funding, which is under the Medicaid section. It has something to do with helping fund with an 85-15 match from the feds, being able to fund community mental health services and maybe a mobile mental health crisis team. I was under the impression that maybe we didn't apply for that because we haven't expanded Medicaid, but other states that haven't expanded Medicaid have applied for that. So I've asked folks in the governor's office for information about that, and we'll see if I get any answers, or maybe someone here knows more about this than I do. But it sounded like a really great place to look to spend money. I think that's all now.
Thank you, Representative Provenza.
Thank you.
Commissioner Ybarra. Commissioner Richardson, any questions or thoughts?
I do. I have several. I've been furiously taking notes on the discussion. Senator Office, let's see who we have. Representative Sherwood. We have Senator Furphy and
Representative Provenza.
Representative Provenza up there in the corner. Where you are on our screen, you're banished in the corner, but you all rearrange yourselves, so I don't have to look again later. So I have some thoughts on this subject. It's interesting that we as local officials sort of think about the needs of our community of Albany County and Laramie, and we're sort of in a bubble. Like we're doing this without considering, or I felt like it was in the context of the conversation that we're doing this without considering the position that the state's in. You know, I kind of feel like we're birds in the nest with our mouths open to the sky waiting for the state to drop a worm in it. And that's a pretty powerless position to be in. Our county has too many government entities trying to compete for a very finite slice, slice up the pie, and it's very finite. And given probably our representatives, or you guys represent our community in, sensibilities, but I'm not sure that ours match the state and the state legislature as a whole. So I have some brainstormy suggestions or things that I think would be more productive. So the reason we don't have enough revenue to operate here is because we don't have enough taxable private property and entities paying sales tax, right? And the PILT discussion will never go anywhere in the legislature. So it's a fun thing to talk about, but it'll never happen, especially in the current funding environment. I mean, the local governments get 70%. Total funding of governments, state and locals, is 70% paid by extractive industries. So and Albany County has none, right? So then when it comes to sales tax redistribution on a per capita basis, we sort of already have that in the form of appropriations to the University of Wyoming, and we have school funding and all of the things that we have, we're already doing that. And I don't believe that the representation from the rest of the state has an appetite to give more to Albany County in terms of PILT or sales tax redistribution on a per capita basis. So I think that if I were asking the representatives when you're at the legislature, because we fundamentally refuse to tax ourselves in a way that we're like a welfare state, the whole state as a whole. I don't remember, but the state spends something like $28,000 per citizen in government services, and the average citizen pays 1/10 of that in actual tax, right? So we're getting a 90% subsidy in all the services that we receive, regardless of what county you live in or what community you live in. I don't believe that 500,000 Wyoming citizens can bootstrap ourselves into a better position. It takes outside investment, right? So it is my opinion that we have to find a way as local community governments and as the legislature to attract high capital intensive but low infrastructure demand kinds of investments. So wind farms are good. Some people complain that they don't create enough jobs, but I like them because we don't have to build schools, wastewater plants, all kinds of stuff like we would if it was a Tyson chicken plant. We wouldn't be building houses and hiring police officers because they don't create very many jobs. But the way that the legislature has chosen to provide funding to local governments through property tax and sales tax, they fit that very well. Data centers do. I don't think we want to increase our population and create jobs because then we have to subsidize more people with a 90% subsidy. So we have to figure out a way. And I think the Bitcoin or the virtual currency thing was kind of one of those. And, we try to be a haven and for people to come to, but in the end, we don't charge them any tax. So they just come here and get free services. So it is my opinion that we need to attract capital intensive investment and do our very best not to block it. We had some trouble with a wind farm here and it was tough. And it's about the only way we're going to get anywhere in this county, even though I don't particularly like where it is. The expansion of broadband is pretty cheap because it's wireless, or it's linked up with fiber to wireless. That can really, really help our state, and it's not very expensive considering the return. I think that state departments need to trim fat in administrative things, and this includes education. We have teachers teaching teachers and educational facilitators, and little counties that have multiple school districts in them because they don't want to have competing high schools in the same school district. So then you have double the administrative, stuff and bus garages and all that kind of stuff. And I think that, education is sort of the holy grail, and it's really hard for the legislature to touch that. But at some point, there has to be some consolidation in the administrative part of education. So that by the time if you're in a kindergarten classroom, by the time the dollar trickles to you, for pencils and paper and whatever, it gets a lot of pennies sliced off of it. That's the last stop is the actual classroom when it comes to education. And it's a tough subject for the legislators to have. And I don't envy you. But I think that is a real conversation if we're going to get anywhere in the big picture that is the state's funding. The COVID money gave us a little bit of a reprieve, from our budget woes. But when the state gets 70% of its revenue from extractive industries, and the second highest, I think, if I remember right, the second highest revenue producer for, tax revenue for governments is tourism, right? So I think that state departments need to trim administrative fat and focus on services and public safety infrastructure, the measurable deliverables at the end. I think that the court filing fees, I'm thinking of things that legislators can do. The clerks of district court have asked forever for an increase in the court filing, the fees associated with filing in their offices. And the legislature isn't too keen on that, but if I remember right, it's been static for a few decades. And what ends up happening is they get subsidized, that the clerk of district court it's a user service, but we commissioners, we local governments end up having to sort of continue to subsidize the users of the court because the fees aren't high enough. I think we need a higher cigarette tax. I think we need to increase the E911 fees, some portion, and use that to pay for WildLink because the state doesn't have enough general fund money. There needs to be a dedicated funding stream for WildLink, and it needs to come through, a $5 increase on E911 or something. I don't support a sales tax on food and medicine because I think that it hits people who are struggling to feed themselves and get medicine the most. It's too hard on poor people. But there are some services that are exempt from sales tax that need to be taxed as a way to add some revenue to the state's coffers. I think we need a higher alcohol tax. We also need a higher lodging tax, especially considering that 500,000 people can't bootstrap our state, and we have millions and millions of people who visit our state and bring lots of money in here. We just need to tax them at a higher rate and use that for infrastructure or some economic development so that we can increase the taxable private capital that gets invested in our state. It's the only way out of this. When it comes to highway infrastructure, we need to increase the electric vehicle tax, because when you don't pay any fuel tax, but you use the roads, you're sort of getting subsidized by everyone who buys fuel, and that needs to be more evenly people driving electric vehicles need to pay for the roads they drive on, same as people who are burning fossil fuel. Especially commercial vehicles, because there are hybrid vehicles coming in, and there will be straight electric vehicles. And I don't remember, but I have commercial trucks, and if it's something like 400, one truck trip, an 80,000 pound semi going down the road does about as much wear on a road as something like 400 car trips, just because of weight and all of that. So we have, you can't get across the country. I-70 is terrible. There's only a couple ways across the country, maybe 4. I-10, I-40, I-70 is not very good. I-80 is amazing. I-90 is not very good. I-40 and I-80 are it. And so we need to tax interstate truckers a toll that maybe is at the entry or the exit of the state, not a toll plaza in the center. So then local trucking companies can run around without having to pay the toll because they're already inside the state. And that's a way that we capture outside money and don't let it leave our state. Also, Representative Overmuller had the sort of the big box corporation income tax. And I never understood why the legislature didn't have the palate, the stomach for it. Because it's my understanding, if you have an international corporation or an interstate corporation, like let's say Walmart, for example, and their headquarters is in Arkansas, when they take that money home to Arkansas, they are taxed on it, but they get exemptions based on, you can't double tax that money. So if they pay state tax in California, they get deductions on it. So when they take Wyoming profits out of Wyoming, if we don't tax it, then Arkansas taxes it, and they keep the money and Walmart, I don't think, cares which state they pay the tax in, because maybe Wyoming's tax rate is lower, or maybe they're the same, but they get sort of an equivalent break, so they're not double taxed when they get it to Arkansas. In other words, there's a final adjustment for what they pay when they get to their home state, and we don't take our chunk, because I guess we're so anti-tax that we would rather give away Wyoming, revenue and treasure to Arkansas for no particularly good reason. And there's a lot of companies that fit in that. And I don't remember the thresholds in his bill, but they were pretty high. It was basically corporations that have to operate in multiple states and probably aren't home in Wyoming. So those are my thoughts. I covered some fast subjects, but lots of things. No matter how much we want sales tax redistribution per capita, there's no coal miner driving in a blizzard on Christmas Eve all night long who wants to send more money to Albany County when he knows that his county is the one paying the freight for the whole state. It's just, there's no palate for that. There's no desire or appetite for that outside of this meeting right here, pretty much. And so we have to face the realities that, we deal with the realities that we're faced with. And we have to locally, we have to attract by having sensible regulation and an intelligible process. We have to attract private capital from outside. That's how so this is my conversation to my fellow commissioners and to council. If we say we're dependent on the state, give us more, and the state's already suffering, our legislators can't do anything for us. It's not a productive discussion. What we can do is work around in our development codes, our own development departments, our planning and zoning processes, and make sure that when somebody runs a pro forma on 5 different communities, and they're ready to bring in $15 million to solve our housing, high housing issue, that we don't run them off. Because if we score 4th instead of 1st or 2nd, they just take their capital somewhere else and we never see. And they don't tell us why they did it, and we never see why it never came here. And we have that problem a lot because our planning processes are funky, and sometimes even the sentiments of us on our boards, we run off private capital that's going to save us and fix our housing market issues. So that's a way that we take control of the problem rather than being little birds in the nest with our mouths wide open waiting for the state legislature to drop a worm in it, because there aren't any worms. It's, and because we don't have any authority to tax, that all lies with the state. I mean, outside of voter approved taxes in the 5th penny and the 6th penny, local governments don't have any taxing authority. We can only charge for services we provide, like through an enterprise fund or something. So because we are stuck with what the legislature has given us as far as ways to raise revenue, we have to maximize and strategize how to attract the capital that will pay the most sales tax and the most property tax, like data centers and wind farms, and put the least amount of stress on our infrastructure. So high value, but not very labor intensive projects is what we have to get in here. And I think Wyoming people we kind of like that we don't have very many people in our state anyway. We don't really want it to turn into traffic jams. We just need high value taxable capital to solve this problem. And it's never been good for the legislature to tie our total government funding, state and local, to worldwide commodities that we don't have any control over the price of. We're a cork in the ocean of coal, oil, gas, and all that stuff. So those are my thoughts on the subject, and that might give you guys a way to nibble around the edges, because if somebody brings up the notion of raising the sales tax by a penny statewide, or doing a personal income tax or a corporate income tax, all hell will break loose. There is no amount of deficits in that legislature that will allow anyone to bring up either of those two subjects without getting run straight out of there. And so we just aren't realistic about our own situation and how to fix it. So.
Thank you. Any of you guys want to comment on anything there? And then I'll just wrap it up quickly from our end.
Commissioner, I did want to weigh in briefly on the idea of infrastructure along the I-80 corridor. I think it's something that the commissioner brought up, and it is an area where I think Laramie will be very attractive and will have a strong opportunity to receive some of the funds in the infrastructure bill because we are along that I-80 corridor. So that's an area where I think we have opportunity to bring in some additional infrastructure, to bring in some dollars, and to hopefully bring in some projects as a result of the federal funds that we'll potentially be able to receive. So I agree there's some good potential there that we should be looking for, and getting back to, I think it was Senator Furphy that was pointing out there might be some magic fund concerns. That's something we'll have to contemplate in this budget session, and I encourage the commissioners in the city to try and contemplate ways where if there are matching requirements that we can find some money to match, because I believe we'll have a short-term opportunity, but we can benefit more than most of the rest of the state with the I-80 infrastructure needs. So I'll just leave it at that, Commissioner, and appreciate the thoughts of Commissioner Richardson.
Anybody else have anything before? Okay. Well, I guess my list is maybe to help give a little bit of ammunition to some of those debates that might be had. In the recent year, the city and the county have collaborated on many things, and I think there's so if there are colleagues that say, well, you can't get the Albany County to work with the city of Laramie, well, we would point to detention center MOUs and EMS And that brings me to, a topic that, as I said on the statewide task force, the EMS that's being considered, I would ask for some flexibility. If you guys could help us get flexibility, because what might work in Sublette County might not work here, and it might not be useful here. And so if there were a way to not tie an EMS service that I'm really proud of in this community, and that we're going to take part in financially as a county, to something that might have to work in a regional call center or regional EMS, having some flexibility in that discussion would be wonderful, so that not one size fits all. And then I also would talk about flexibility in the county road fund. When I first got here, that county road fund was so important to us breaking even. Now, there was some discussion about if it was used correctly or not. It would be nice if that county road fund could be made so that the purchase of vehicles for the county road graders, snow plows, could be used that way instead of coming out of our general fund. That would allow us to use that budget more nimbly and more effectively, and also help us with the budget. And that's a small tweak, but in the first couple of years I was here, that was the difference between laying off people and having a balanced budget. And so, and then I would think about, as people are contemplating Wyoming, there has been some discussion about taxes coming out of the county end of vehicle taxation. Wow, that's a hard one. In a place where you're just getting by, to do that, and lessen the ability for us to fund our needs. And so for me, flexibility, creative, if there's a way so we can figure out, I agree with Commissioner Richardson 100% about tobacco taxes. So in a rare case of bipartisanship, the both of us are on the same page here. And you can tell people that you saw that happen about tobacco taxes. We're already paying that, and we're paying it real inefficiently. And I see that the ravages every day in my day job. As you all know, people living at the margins smoke at a higher rate, and they go to emergency rooms. Those charges are passed on to all of us. And so it would just be nice to recognize that and notice that when you raise tobacco taxes, you also cut down the amount of people using tobacco. It's just that simple. And our surrounding states, we're not even close. We're dimes and half dollars and maybe dollars lower than them. It's even lower than some of the places where they grow tobacco for these products. And so that is just crazy to me. But with that all, I really do appreciate you guys' willingness to sit in with us, to share with us, and for the work that you do. I think this is a wonderful opportunity for, I'll come with you, Paul, in just a minute. If you can get us creativity and innovative ways to tax ourselves, that would be wonderful. I think some communities, I like to think Albany County is one of those communities that sees the investment in themselves. If Sublette County, my home county, and I'm just picking on them, doesn't see that need, well, okay, we shouldn't be tied to that type of thinking. And so if there was some creative way that those counties could invest in themselves, but not making it necessary for every county, that would be really innovative and creative, and I think we would use it well here in Albany County. That said, Mayor Weaver, I saw you're there, and I'm out of gas, so go right on ahead.
Mayor, you're muted.
Of course I am. Thanks, Commissioner Gosar, and I wasn't trying to jump the gun on there. I know that there's a couple other items. I also know we don't want to be here all night. But I see that Commissioner Gabriel has asked to speak, and he hasn't shared anything with us yet tonight. So I'd like to actually go to him first, and then I have a comment I'd like to make. Councilmember Gabriel.
Thanks a lot, Mayor. Appreciate it. Anyone in the legislative delegation can respond to this, but seems to me like things are not quite as dismal as maybe they might seem. Craig report is looking a little bit better than most people thought. We have ARPA funding from the feds. Vice Mayor talked about the governor's recommendation for UW and the community colleges, that funding. I was just kind of curious from anyone on the legislative delegation if you would like to comment on maybe things aren't quite as bad as they might seem.
Yeah, Councilor Gabriel, there's no question that the Craig report came in dramatically ahead of expectations. That will lead to several $100 million of revenue above original projections. There's also the addition of the ARP funding, which a substantial portion of that's being swapped out with general funds through the Department of Corrections budget, which leads to $450 to $500 million more dollars. So all told, projections over the next 3 years end up about $1.2 billion ahead of what we would have expected, a year ago. And that's largely due, as you know, first of all, to the ARP Act funding, to the fact that the oil price has been high. So while everybody complains and continuously grouses about the high price of gas at the pump, every time I go to the pump and the price of gas is high, I'm thankful for the fact that we can pay for schools. And natural gas prices have been substantially higher than expected as well. We got up to $6 per MCF for a while this year, and the average was probably almost $1 over, I think, what Craig originally projected. And that projects further out as well, as do the oil prices. So Craig projections for a while are higher because of oil and gas. This gets back to what Commissioner Richardson was saying a few minutes ago, which is that we do have a one-trick tax system, and when it goes well, it goes well, and we just happen to have had some fortune over this last year. There's no reason to project that much further, realistically, so we know for the next 2 or 3 years, we're okay because of ARP and because of the mineral revenue. We have some higher expectations, and that's a reprieve. But as you've seen, the legislature simply takes the reprieve as a don't do anything, don't solve the problems approach. And so I'm concerned that we won't continue to take revenue seriously, as we have at least begun to have conversations about it. So it's a mixed blessing where we've been granted that reprieve. We should have sufficient funding to provide the direct distribution, and I don't know where that will come down. We'll see. Hopefully it will come back to another 105 million plus. I'd like to see more, but we don't know whether we will. The governor's budget was incredibly frugal, I'll say. I think it was frugal as a counter to the Joint Appropriations Committee, and an expectation that the JAC will then be responsible to add more revenue. So right now the budget doesn't look that good. It doesn't look as good as I think it will end up after the budget session when the distribution goes through. So we're a lot better off than we could be from the revenue side. It's hard to extrapolate that very far out. The reality is we do need to provide flexibility to the cities, towns, and counties to have taxation authority over their own affairs. I think everybody here knows I support everything that was suggested as a revenue alternative, and we'll continue to try and advance those. So it's not a solution, but it's a continued reprieve, and I'm just hopeful that at some point more legislators will see the light and start to recognize that we need to have an appropriate revenue and taxation structure for an industry that isn't coal, oil, or gas. And Minority Leader Connolly is here too. Welcome. She was over doing redistricting, so I'm sure she has plenty of thoughts in this space too. Kathy, you're muted despite the fact that you're not muted. We can't hear you. I don't know that your mic is working because you're not muted.
Well,
She also sounds a little mousy. I don't know.
Oh, you've got the mouse problem. This is not my first time experiencing Kathy's mouse problem. It's her microphone.
I've had a very similar experience with the microphone in my laptop dying, and I now have to use my phone for the audio when I'm on Zoom. That's a bummer.
Kathy dropped, and I think she'll come right back. That's what she's done in other meetings that we've been to where her microphone wasn't working. She's going to leave and come back.
I think Councilmember O'Doherty had raised a hand.
Can I just raise, as far as flexibility, the net metering business, because we had great hopes for our solar panels for the ice center and the rec center, but they're really only bringing 1% or 2% of our energy bill for those buildings. So I think it's up to 7% for the rec center. Todd might know, but if we have real estate, we would love to reduce our bills and also meet our goals that our citizens want. So if we could, regular residents aren't going to have 25 kilowatt arrays, but cities and counties can do that. And I think that city and county working together, we could really expand and reduce our costs. Thanks.
Thanks, Councilmember O'Doherty. Legislators, you should know that the city of Laramie's recent efforts towards carbon reduction and implementing some more renewable sources are garnering a little bit of attention from some of the national municipal organizations, because we really are trying to make an effort towards that, and we've had good partnership with the county. And I know that Representative Connolly's here, and I want to make sure that she's got some time to share things with us. I want to just add one thing to what Commissioner Gosar was saying earlier too, by way of hoping that it helps you all in Cheyenne, is the city and the county have really been making a lot of effort towards seeing where we can team up to stretch dollars in areas like EMS and at the detention center, and find ways to work together in a fair and equitable way to share those costs of government that we need to, and just really try to squeeze efficiencies out of that. And you're going to continue to see us do that for as long as you have a council and a commission that wants to do that, which I think is today, tomorrow, and probably going forward for many years, because not only because we need to, but we recognize that responsibility towards the local residents and the ratepayers and taxpayers here in Albany County. So we've got a lot of things going in that direction. We're going to keep doing that. So I just kind of wanted to toss that out there too. Commissioner Richardson mentioned some overlap and some competing concerns from local government agencies, and that does go on. What also goes on is a lot of effort to try to figure out ways where we can identify efficiencies and share costs, and we're going to keep doing that. Anyway, just something to add on. Representative Connolly, thanks for joining us. How's your sound?
Can you hear me now? Oh, thank you. I do have this issue with becoming a chipmunk about once a month. So first, let me say I'm, so sorry for being late, but know that I was over in Cheyenne at the corporation's redistricting meeting, representing Region 2, which is all of Albany County, which is all of us here, and how we think about redistricting. I'll just tell you that if there is ever an example of sausage making in kind of policy making, I think this is it, right? We're in the midst of it, and it is a process that's going to go on for, I think, the next several months. And like we had talked about at our last public meeting, Albany County is very much in play in terms of Rock River in particular, but also in terms of how Senate districts will be distributed. And so we are there, and actually Senator Rothfuss joined me this morning to present our plan. And I jumped in when honestly Region 9, which is Sweetwater and Carbon, had presented a plan which we did not know anything about until it was published, that came into Albany County. And so we could respond to that and our desire to remain whole and what that would look like. And so just so you know that we are trying to be on top, we are on top of what's going on in the legislature in terms of redistricting and how it will impact Albany County, the city of Laramie. So let me just say that. And then just to jump in just a little bit, and again, I'll get notes from others about everything that has gone on, but about money. And so, Councilor Gabriel, you had asked about the money that's coming forward. Number one, you should know that I think that you should be absolutely confident that we will be getting in the city of Laramie, the county, the direct distribution that we have gotten in the past, right? That you can count on for the next biennium, right? That's for sure. All right, I'll put my dollars to donuts on that one. You don't need to worry about that. But the question is going forward. And it was interesting to me, I was asked to serve, to be a panelist on the Governor's Business Forum last week, the week before. And my job, in part, was to illustrate to this enormous group of business leaders that even though we have right now, I'll call it a federal bailout, right? We've got money that's coming in from the feds, and we just have to figure out how to distribute it. But in all honesty, that does not take care of what our revenue issues are in the state, and that we need to think about it differently. We need to not rely on the extractive industries. And even though Councilor Richardson had said, there's no traction for talking about income tax or raising sales tax, right? I 100% agree right this second, right this minute, but not for the future, right? Not even for 5 years, right? But the federal money is bailing us out. My message was, we need to think about our future, and our future could include, right, an increase in sales tax, a modest increase or an establishment of an income tax, right, both personal and corporate. Come on, right? We have Councilor Gosar talking about, right, alcohol and tobacco taxes. We are at the bottom of the barrel when it comes to every one of those, including property tax. Okay, so I put out there, right, if we're going to think for the future, if we're going to be visionary, the time is now, right? Let's be visionary right now so that we don't run into the issues that we had just 2 years ago. And I appreciate so much, Mayor Weaver talking about, I want you to figure out how we can tax ourselves. I appreciate how much that you're willing to say, let's just figure out how we can tax ourselves, because we as a state are controlling that you can't tax yourself. I appreciate that. But honestly, that's only a part of the answer. We need statewide solutions. Laramie and Albany County are generous. We've seen that, right, with what we did with our high school, for example, right? We're generous, but it's the state's responsibility, and I truly believe that. So that's my 2 cents right there. And so, that's certainly the kinds of things that I honestly think that your Albany County delegation certainly understands about the position of Laramie and Albany County when it comes to revenue. So thanks.
Thanks a lot. Thank you very much, Representative Connolly. And we have had a lot of discussion about that tonight about, what can we do to tax ourselves locally? But of course, we also understand the limitations around that. And I think you raise a really good point. It is not going to be the complete solution. At some point, you could only go back to your local residents in any community in Wyoming and say, hey, let's pay some more taxes because we have to take care of everything at this local level. That's not sustainable, and it's not going to take care of the problem. I think your city council here agrees very much with that. And we appreciate those updates about redistricting as well. That was one thing we were hoping to get a little bit of news about tonight, and we have. And I think the council understands very much that it's live process that's going to be ongoing. Really interesting to hear about some of the stuff that happened this morning. Personally, I'm not surprised, and I think there'll be more of that to come, perhaps from other parts of the state. Who knows? We're all staying tuned. I should share with you that we had meetings with our wards. We do these ward meetings on Tuesdays. Sometimes they're well attended. Sometimes they're a little more sparsely attended. About how we might be drawing the city council wards. And I think, as you all understand pretty well, there is a desire and a practical purpose to trying to keep those city council wards matching up more or less, sometimes more, sometimes less, with the population and the constituency groups in the legislative districts, at least those that make up the city, within the city limits. And there's an eye towards that. We shared last night with folks from League of Women Voters and other interested constituents that will probably be an approach that we try to take. But because so many questions remain unanswered from the redistricting process at this point in time, we're just talking about ideas. When we know what those districts really are going to be, I think then we'll probably be in a somewhat time-limited fashion trying to come up with wards that overlay in a way that makes sense. And not to go into too much detail about the topic, but there's a need to do that, I think, that we've become accustomed to, because it makes sense with the precincts. And I know that the county clerk is here, and I don't know if she wants to add to that, but it's good from a convenience to the voters' perspective to make sure that folks, when they show up to vote, that they're not voting in weird split precincts, and that those city council districts overlay with those legislative districts in a somewhat sensible way. And County Clerk, I don't know if you want to add anything to that, but I do think that is something we try to pay attention to and incorporate in our city council district boundaries and in this process. I guess I'd see if you'd want to add anything to that.
I just would add that I appreciate the collaboration between us working together. We look at Albany County as a whole with our legislative delegation as well as the council in my office. And so we continue to look at and strive for those areas where we don't have any splits in our boundaries, and we'll continue to work towards that goal.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you very much, County Clerk. And I think we're all on the same page there. And I guess I'd make just a little bit of noise, as I have over the last couple of months about some interest from the City Council about trying to maybe retain that West Laramie part of the City of Laramie in legislative districts within the city limits of Laramie, if possible. I think there are reasons, and they've been well articulated and explained to us why that might not end up being the case. On the other hand, I think we could share with you some reasons why we think that does make sense, just from, in as much as there's a desire to keep Albany County whole, I think there's a desire to try to keep representation whole within the city limits amongst your city council and your legislative and our legislative members. But we also understand there are many considerations, both practical and political, for how those districts might be drawn. But we do think there are probably some advantages to keeping West Laramie in legislative districts that also include Laramie proper. But we understand, again, there's a lot of moving parts here. So we had those meetings, and we expressed a similar sentiment to the people that attended them, that it's very much a work in progress, and to monitor it and stay tuned. It's about 8 o'clock. I think we've got maybe a few more minutes here to see if anybody else had anything that they wanted to bring up.
Mayor Weaver, I would. I'd like to offer, and I've just signed you on, I guess. So, surprise. If you guys needed expertise on some of this stuff, and you could give us a little heads up, we might be useful as far as preventing presenting testimony. You know, Representative Sherwood, I heard about industrial siding. We took a 30% cut from the industrial siding we asked for to what we were awarded. And so, you know, 2.76% minus 30%, right? It's already less than whatever. And I think that there has to be some understanding that we don't get what we ask for. And so I would be more than happy to talk about, you know, the lengths that we went as a county. Mayor Weaver probably can talk about it as a city or whoever else, to say, you know, it seems like you get 2.76% or whatever the percentage is, but you really don't. And not many people do. And so, you know, if we could work together with the council, with the commission to have some expertise in some of these areas, I'd be more than happy to try to clear out some time to say, this is how it went. And, you know, that might be helpful. And I'd love to reciprocate the work that you do for us. Maybe we can help you do the work that you're trying to do.
Hear to that. I think that our legislators, Senators Furphy, Rothfuss, representatives, all three of you with us, you know that if you think we can be useful showing up for testimony, or even just maybe a call or an email to some of your colleagues over there to communicate about anything, you know, you always know to let us know. Maybe as just a little bit of a capper for me, I think there's continued concern and interest about a couple of things that you've shared with us tonight. Concern, I think, about proposed changes to the Business Ready Communities program, and if we can have some more conversations about where we can go with that, I think that would be important. Laramie certainly utilized that program a lot and may like to be able to do that in the future, and might be less likely to do that if that increase comes about. I think there's interest and concern about mental health funding and about how we might be able to utilize that in the way that we respond to some of the kinds of calls that our law enforcement agencies are called upon to address in this community, and maybe some different approaches there, and maybe some ways that some flexibility with how we use those dollars to try to make some positive changes for our constituents. And then, of course, continued interest in how the finances are going to go, and we appreciate all those comments. And also concern about the community college issue. Those are just a couple of things, but some highlights for me as we get to the end of the second hour here. And if we need to have more conversations, I think you know how to get a hold of all of us, and we feel pretty confident in our ability to get a hold of you to discuss things maybe in more detail, not here on Zoom at 8 o'clock at night. I don't have anything else that I want to highlight, but there are no doubt things that we've missed that I want to, give counselors and commissioners another shot at. Okay. Well, I don't see a lot of hands popping up. It's almost like there's too much to start another topic, right? We need to think about it and then email you or something. We always appreciate the time for these meetings, and I think it's really useful to get the legislators, the county commissioners, and the city council people all at the same meeting to sort of kick some of these things around. I think there's a lot of consensus on a lot of these topics, which is nice. I'll say I wish there was similar consensus to where you folks do your work, but at least you have some picture of where your local folks are at, and we do appreciate that time. If there's something information-wise that you don't see in that packet, you know where to go. And if there's more additional information that maybe can be expanded on, it's the same story. Commissioner Gosar, I don't see council members raising their hands. I think I've repeated the same points enough this evening. I don't know if you have anything else you'd like to add, but I think at this point, we'd probably be prepared to conclude this work session.
I'd just like to say thank you. 5 of our 6 members hanging out with us for 2 hours on a Wednesday night. Really do appreciate it. But please, if there's something that we can be helpful about, let me know, and we'll find expertise to help support where you guys are coming from. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your work on behalf of all of us, and Hope you have a wonderful evening. Oh, we're done over here at the commission.
Thank you all. Appreciate your time too.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. Nice to see you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you, guys. Good night.
Good night.
Good night. Council, do we have additional items that we need to cover before we all leave? I think we may have covered everything, but I just want to make sure before I say, okay, good night, that we didn't have anything hanging out. And I'm pulling up the agenda now. Mr. Feeser, am I missing anything?
Nothing on this end, Mayor Weaver.
Okay.
Mayor, the only thing I have is you usually have a public comment after each agenda item. I don't know if you wanted to open that to a public comment.
Yeah, I think we should. Thank you, City Clerk. I think we should. I see we have some attendees, and we will leave it open if there is a need for public comment. Yeah, I'd like to recognize Dr. Sally Palmer and give her an opportunity to share any thoughts with us. Go ahead, you have the floor.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
One, I stand in gratitude to what we can do together. It is a gift, a great, immense gift to live in this community with so many people who care about everyone. I would say one thing briefly, Paul, that in the news this past week in the New York Times was about a community in Texas where there's major drilling very close to a child care center. And the subtitle kind of said, City Council never objected. It was okay with the city. And I thank you for keeping your eyes and your ears and your hearts open so that doesn't happen here in Laramie. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Palmer. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Yeah, it's. I think it's safe to say that your local elected officials, pretty much across the board at every level here in Laramie and Albany County, try to keep their eyes open for a lot of different things. You know, and part of the reason for that, a big part of the reason for that, is also the makeup of our community, our constituents, and the people that live here, and what they expect out of folks too. That is really the engine for a lot of that. Okay, well, you know, I have that same mixture of worry, concern, and a little bit of hope that I usually do at the conclusion of these legislative meetings. It's good to hear that maybe those supplemental distributions aren't going to be hammered too much, but a lot of other concerns. And we'll be meeting again on Tuesday. So thanks everybody for being here for the Wednesday evening meeting. I think it was worth our time, to be sure. Shall we close it? All right, good night, good evening. Thank you very much. Oh, Councilmember Gabriel.